Problem number 1. In the figure, assuming clockwise moment as positive, compute the moment of force F, which is equal to 200 kg, and force E equal to 165 kg about points A, B, C, and D. So in here, we first determine the direction of the components of each force. As you can see in this force F here, the arrow is pointing to quadrant 1, so therefore this has the horizontal component directed to the right, which is f of x, and the vertical component directed upward, which is the f of y. Now, for the force E, this is the component directed to the right and directed downward. As you can see here, the force E is directed to quadrant 4. So it has horizontal component directed to the right, and this is the px. And here, the py, or the vertical component, directed downward. The first thing that we are going to do is to compute the value of these components. But as you can see here, we didn't have direction, so we will determine first direction. You have choices whether to choose angular direction or the slope. As you can see in this figure, we can determine the direction by just counting the blocks. So slope is defined as the rise over run. So we will count the rise. That's for this f here, 1, 2, 3. So we have 3 rise. And for the run, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have 4 run here. So in order for us to determine the diagonal here, we will just be using the Pythagorean theorem. Since this is 3, 4, 5 triangle, so without computing, we know that this is 5. So for the sake of the computation, if we are going to compute for the diagonal here, we are just going to compute the square root of the sum of the square of the sides, right? So we have the square root of the sum of 3 square and the 4 square, and that would give you 5. Now, for this, we have here the direction, and for the rise, we have 1, 2, 3. So we have 3 rise here, and for the run, 1, 2. So we have 2 run. And if we are going to compute for this diagonal here, we are just going to use the Pythagorean theorem. That is just the square root of the sum of the square of the sides, so 2 square plus 3 square. And we have here the diagonal, which is equal to the square root of 13. Now let us go into compute for the components. For the fx, we have here the fx is the horizontal component. So that is just equal to the magnitude of the f multiplied by the slope. So we have here 4. Since this x here is horizontal, so we take the 4, that's the horizontal component, and the diagonal 5. We have here, since f is equal to 200 kilogram, so we have here 200 multiplied by 4 over 5, and that would give us 160 kilogram. Now for Fy, as you can see here, Fy is a vertical component. So we take the F, the vertical component, that's 3, over the diagonal 5. And this is equal to, since F is 200, so we have 200 multiplied by 3 over 5, and that would give us 120 kilogram. Now for this Px here, Px is equal to the force P multiplied by the slope. And since this is horizontal, meaning we are going to take the horizontal component and we write here the diagonal, which is square root of 13. So horizontal component is 2 and the diagonal is square root of 13. And this is equal to, since p is 165, multiplied by 2 over square root of 13. And this would give us 91.526 kilogram. Now for the py, we have here the force P multiplied by the vertical component, so that's 3 over the diagonal square root of 13. This is equal to 165, that's 3 over square root of 13. And this is equal to 137.288 kilogram. So in computing for the moment of the force, we compute in each point. Since we already had computed for the components, so lalagyan natin siya dito. The horizontal component here for Fx is 160 kilogram. For Fy, this is 120 kilogram. And for Px, this is equal to 91.526 kilogram. And for Py, that is 137.288 kilogram. So since we are asked to compute for the moment created about the point A, B, C, and D, so first, dito muna tayo kay point A. So kung kay point A tayo, we should remember that in order for us to create a moment, so we know that the moment is equal to force times distance. So kailan tayo nagkakaroon ng zero moment? Nagkakaroon tayo ng zero moment if this distance here is equal to 0. So meaning, nagkakaroon tayo ng zero moment kung yung force natin ay tatama sa point natin. So in this case, since the point A here, no? So ito yung point A, ito ngayon, yung fx natin, no? So ito ngayon, yung fx natin, ay tatama siya dito sa point A. So meaning hindi siya magkakaroon ng moment since wala siyang perpendicular distance from the point. So si fx ay hindi magki-create ng moment about point A because the distance would be equal to 0. So we have here the moment at point A is equal to first, so ito yung fy. Si Fy ay iikot ng, since dito yung point natin, si Fy ay iikot ng counterclockwise. So therefore, this Fy here will create a negative moment. So we have here negative Fy, so that's 120 multiplied by the distance. So gaano kalayo si Fy from point A? And from the definition, the distance must be perpendicular. So, since Fy is vertical, yung distance na i-consider natin papuntang point A is the horizontal distance, which is this distance here. Yung distance na yan yung perpendicular distance ng Fy papuntang point A. So, gaano siya kalayo? So, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, that is 5 blocks. But, the measurement of each block is 0.3 meter. So that is to be multiplied by 0.3. So dito, ang kinukompute natin ay moment of force F about points A, B, C, and D. Okay, so yung moment and this is equal to, so 120 times 5 times 0.3, that is equal to negative 180 kilogram meter. How about the moment created by the force F with respect to point B? So, nandito yung point B natin. Ito. Okay, so in this case, kung sa point B, as you can see, itong Fy tatama dun sa point B. No? So, meaning si Fy ay hindi mag-create ng moment. Si Fx will create a moment with respect to point B, and kung papaikutin natin si Fx with respect to point B here, it will rotate clockwise. So therefore, this Fx here will create a clockwise moment. So we have the moment at point B is equal to Fx, so that's 160, multiplied by the distance. So gaano kalayo yung Fx papuntang point B? Since yung ating Fx is horizontal, so meaning, ito, yung vertical na distance na to, yan yung perpendicular distance of Fx from point B. So, bibilangin natin kung ilang blocks ito. We have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So, we have 6 blocks and each block measures 0.3 meter. So, that's 0.3. And computing for this, we have here 288 kilogram meter. Next, we compute for the moment created by the force F at point C. So, in this case, ito si point C. Si Fx ay hindi tatama sa point C, si Fy hindi rin tatama sa point C. Therefore, both the Fx and the Fy will create a moment with respect to point C. So, for the Fx will rotate clockwise. So, meaning, this will create a positive moment. And for the Fy, since upward ito yung point C natin, mag-create din to ng clockwise rotation. So, this is also positive. Okay, so the moment at point C is equal to Fx muna tayo. So, kay Fx, that's 160. Multiply by the distance. Since Fx is horizontal, so yung distance papuntang point C ay ito. That's the perpendicular distance. And kung bibilangin natin to, we have 1, 2, 3, so 3 blocks. Since we have 3 blocks, so that's 3, and each block measures 0.3. And next, since the Fy here will also create a clockwise rotation, so that's plus Fy. Si Fy is 120. So, since yung Fy is vertical, the horizontal distance papunta dito sa point C ay ito yun. No? So, that's the horizontal distance. So, the same yan. No? Since si Fy ay natatranslate naman along line of action, so ito yun. No? Yung distance niya, horizontal distance. Okay. So, we have here Fy. So, the distance is 1. So, 1 block lang yun. And each block is 0.3 meter. So, with this, so computing for the moment, we have here for the moment at C, this is equal to 180 kilogram meter. Now, let's proceed with the moment at point D. Si point D ay nandito. And if we are going to compute for the moment at point D, so both the Fx and the Fy will create a moment at point D. So, for Fx, kung dito tayo sa point D, yung reference natin yung ating moment center. No? So, si Fx will rotate clockwise with respect to point D, and this will rotate positive. And the Fy here will rotate counterclockwise, and this will create a negative moment. Okay, so for the moment at point D, this is equal to the Fx, so that's 160, multiplied by the perpendicular distance. Since nandito yung point D, And this is the line of action of fx. So meaning, ito yung ating perpendicular distance papuntang point D. And bibilangin natin yung mga blocks na to. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have here 6 blocks which measures 0.3 each. Then for the Fy, si Fy ay mag-rotate ng counterclockwise, so that's negative 120. And the distance, since yung Fy natin is vertical, no? And this is the line of action, so ito yung horizontal distance natin from the point D. And this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 5 blocks of 0.3. Ayan. So computing for the value of the moment at D, we have here 108 kilogram meter. Okay, so another solution for this is, what if dito natin nilagay sa tail yung ating component instead na nandun siya sa head? So, try natin. And of course, this will also give you the same answer. So this would be the Fx equal to 160 kilogram. And this is the Fy equal to 120 kilogram. Now, so instead na dito natin siya nilagay. Yan. Tsaka to. Okay? So, kukumputin ulit natin yung moment at A, B, C, and D. So, for the moment at A, dito tayo nag-take ng moment. So, ibig sabihin si Fy at saka si Fx dito ay mag-equate ng moment with respect to point A. So, for the Fx, since ito si point A, si Fx will rotate counterclockwise, and this is negative. And the Fy will also create a counterclockwise rotation, so this is also negative. So Fx will rotate counterclockwise, so that's negative 160. And since this is the line of action, this is now the perpendicular distance of Fx to point A. And that's 1, 2, 3. So that's 3 blocks. So we have 3 blocks which measures 0.3 meters. Okay. For the Fy, since Fy will also rotate counterclockwise, so this is also negative. It's 120. And the perpendicular distance of Fy to point A, since this is the line of action, then this is the perpendicular distance, and that's 1. So it's 1 block of 0.3. Okay, so computing for this, so we have, and that is equal to negative 180 kilogram meter. And as you can see, this is just the same with our previous answer. Okay, next, we are going to compute the moment at point B. So computing moment at point B, andito si point B, ito yung kinoconsider natin dito ngayon. So, for the Fx, si Fx will rotate clockwise with respect to point B. And for the Fy will also rotate clockwise. So, meaning this is positive and this is positive. So, for the Fx, that's 160. So, it's 160 times the distance to point B, since ito yung line of action natin kay Fx. Therefore, this is the perpendicular distance to point B. So, it's 1, 2, 3. So, it's 3 blocks. So, it's 3 times 0.3. Then, for the Fy, it will also rotate clockwise, plus the magnitude of Fy, that's 120, multiplied by the perpendicular distance. Since this is the line of action of Fy, so therefore this is the perpendicular distance to point B. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's 4 blocks. 4 times 0.3. And computing for this, we have here 288 kilogram meter. Now, so as you can see, it is just the same with our previous answer here. And for the moment at point C, so dito, may advantage siya kasi si fx ay tatama sa point C. So meaning, si fx ay magsi-0. So si fy na lang yung mag-create na moment with respect to point C. So for the fy will rotate clockwise. So it's positive. So fy is equal to 120. Then for the perpendicular distances, this is the line of action. This is the perpendicular distance. And the perpendicular distance of fy to point C is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's 5 blocks. So we have 5 times 0.3. And computing for this, and that's 180 kilogram meter. So we have here 180 kilogram meter. This is just the same with our previous answer here. Okay, so at point B, dalawa sila mag-create ng rotation, the fx and the fy. For the fx will rotate clockwise, so that's positive. And for the fy with respect to point B will rotate counterclockwise, and it's negative. So we have here the moment at point D is equal to cfx, so that's positive rotation. It's 160. What is the perpendicular distance of fx to point D? Since this is the line of action of fx, therefore this is the perpendicular distance to point D. It's 1, 2, 3 blocks. So we have here 3 times 0.3. Then for the fy will rotate counterclockwise, so it's negative, and its magnitude is 120 kilogram. And for the perpendicular distance, since this is the line of action of fy, so meaning this is the perpendicular distance, and that's 1 unit. So we have here 1 times 0.3. And computing for this, so we have, and that's 108. So this is equal to 108 kilogram meter, which is just the same with our answer here. This only denotes na the same effect yung makukuha nating moment. Basta yung components ay ilalagay natin along the line of action of the force being applied. So, pwede siya kahit dito, no? Tsaka doon. Pero, you have to compute for the distance. Medyo complicated kasi merong mga butal-butal doon. So, ito, kasi talagang tumama siya doon sa may intersection. So, hindi siya mahirap i-determine yung distance. So, bakit natin pahihirapan yung buhay natin, diba? Okay, so let us now compute for the moment of force E about points A, B, C, and D. So, let's start with point A. If this is the point A, and dito, ang mag-create ng moment kay point A is the Px and the Py. So, Px will rotate counterclockwise, and this is negative moment. And the Py will rotate clockwise, and this is positive moment. So we have moment at point A is equal to Px, so that's counterclockwise, so it's negative 91.526 multiplied by the perpendicular distance, since this is the line of action of Px. Therefore, this is the perpendicular distance to point A. And it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that is 6 blocks of 0.3. Then, the Py here will rotate clockwise, so it's positive Py is 137.288 multiplied by the perpendicular distance. As you can see here, this is the line of action of Py, so therefore this is the perpendicular distance to point A, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks. So that's 4 blocks of point 3. And computing for this, so we have the moment at point A is equal to 0. So bakit 0 kaya lumabas na sagot? As you can see here, kung ito si force P, and kung i-extend natin siya P, so makikita natin dito that the line of action of force P ay tatama sa point A. So therefore, hindi siya mag-create ng moment with respect sa point A kasi the moment at A created by force P is also equal to the force times distance. This force P here, no, times the distance. Since yung distance nito is equal to 0, so therefore, the moment at A is equal to 0. Okay. So, how about the moment at point B? So, at point B, since nandito si point B, si Px ay tatama sa point B. So, therefore, it will not create moment at point B. And si Py na lang yung mag-create ng moment sa point B. And as you can see here, Py will rotate counterclockwise and it's negative. So we have here the moment at point B, si Py, that's negative 137.288 multiplied by the perpendicular distance. Since ito si Py, so ito yung perpendicular distance, that's 1. So we have 1 times 0.3. And computing for this, we have negative 41.186 kilogram meter. Okay, how about the moment at point C? Since this is the point C, mag-create ng moment si Px at si Py. Okay, so Px with respect to point C will rotate counterclockwise, so it's negative. And for Py, with respect to point C, Py will also rotate counterclockwise. So we have here Px, so that's negative kasi counterclockwise, 91.526 multiplied by the perpendicular distance. As you can see here, kung ito si Px, no, and ito si Px at ito si C, this is the line of action of Px. So therefore, this is the perpendicular distance. And it's 1, 2, 3. No? So 3 blocks. So we have here 3 times 0.3. Okay. So for the Py will also rotate counterclockwise. So it's negative 137.288. Multiplied by the perpendicular distance. Since this is the line of action of Py, so therefore this is the perpendicular distance of Py to point C, and that's 2 blocks. So we have 2 times 0.3. And computing for this, the moment at C is equal to negative 164.746. And the moment at point D, so we have this. Kung titingnan natin, if this is the point D, si Px ay tatama sa point D, so therefore, si Px ay hindi mag-create ng moment at point D. So therefore, that leaves only the Py will create moment at point D. And as you can see here, Py will rotate clockwise with respect to point D, and that's positive moment. So we have here Py, so that's 137.288 multiplied by the perpendicular distance. And since this is the location of Py, this is the perpendicular distance of Py to point D. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 blocks. That's 4 times 0.3. And computing for this, we have 164.746 kilogram meter. What if we are not going to use this Px and Py in this location? So, dito tayo sa tail. And kung ililipat natin dito sa Px, so this would be the Px equal to 91.526 kilogram. And the Py here equal to 137.288 kilogram. So, nilipat natin dito si Px at si Py. And, as expected, pareho yung moment na makikreate nito. So, for the moment at point A, as you can see here, with respect to point A, Px will rotate counterclockwise and it's negative. And the Py here will rotate clockwise and it's positive. Okay, so computing for the moment at A is equal to the Px, so that's negative 91.526 multiplied by the perpendicular distance to point A. Since this is the line of action of Px, then this is the perpendicular distance and it's 3 blocks. So we have here 3 times 0.3. Then this Py here will rotate clockwise. So we have here positive 137.288 multiplied by the perpendicular distance, since this is the line of action of Py. So meaning this is the perpendicular distance 2 blocks from Py. And that's 2 multiplied by 0.3. Now, computing for this is equal to 0, no? Which is just equal to our previous answer here. Then, for the moment at B, that is, since this is the location of point B, so meaning the Px and the Py will have the moment with respect to point B in this case. So, the Px will rotate clockwise and it's positive with respect to point B tayo. And for the Py, it will rotate counterclockwise and it's negative. So we have here 91.526, that's positive kasi clockwise. And the perpendicular distance, since this is the line of action of Px, so therefore this is the perpendicular distance and that's 3 blocks. So we have here times 3 times 0.3. And the Py will rotate counterclockwise. And that's negative 137.288 multiplied by the perpendicular distance. As you can see here, this is the Py, so this is the perpendicular distance to point B, and that's 1, 2, 3, so 3 blocks. So we have here 3 times 0.3. And computing for the moment at point B, that is equal to negative 41.186 kilogram meter. Now, this is just the same with our answer here. And computing for the moment at point C, so since this is point C, in this case, si Px ay tatama sa point C, so therefore Px will not create moment with respect to point C. And the Py will rotate counterclockwise with respect to point C, so therefore that's negative moment. So since a py will rotate counterclockwise, so that's negative. Py, that's 137.288, multiplied by the perpendicular distance, since this is the line of action of py, so therefore this is the perpendicular distance, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, so 4 blocks. So we have 4 blocks of 0.3. So computing for this, we have, and this is negative 164.746 kilogram meter. And this is just the same with our previous answer. And last, we have the moment at D. So nandito si point D, both the px and the py will rotate with respect to point D and create a moment. So for the px will rotate clockwise, and this is positive. And for this py here, py will also rotate clockwise, and it's positive. So we have px, that's 91.526, multiplied with the perpendicular distance. As you can see, this is our point B. This is the line of action of px, so therefore this is the perpendicular distance, and that's 3 blocks. So we have 3 times 0.3. And for the py will also rotate clockwise, and that's positive 137.288, multiplied by the perpendicular distance, since this is the line of action of py, so therefore this is the perpendicular distance, and that's 2 blocks. So we have here times 2 times 0.3. And computing for this, we have 164.746 kilogram meter. And this is the same with our previous answer.